I wanted to follow up on some of the questions from the chairman with Mr. Norland and Mr. Gratakos. My understanding is that according to the GAO, from 2003 through the first half of 2010, renewable energy constituted 0.23% of total Ex-Im Bank financing exports, despite the congressional goal that you talked about, Mr. Norland, of 10%. And from Colorado's standpoint, our clean tech energy industry grew at a record 32.7% in the last 5 years, and we're not alone. This is happening all over the country. It's a huge part of America's business outlook. I know a lot of experts question whether Ex-Im's lending patterns are doing enough when it comes to clean tech goods and services. So I'd like to hear you specifically delineate what you think the challenges have been to meeting that 10% goal and what we can do to advance that cause.
Thank you, Senator. One of the interesting things in the GAO report was a comparison between Ex-Im Bank's efforts to promote renewable energy and meet that mandate and its efforts to meet its small business support mandate. And it found that it had met its small business support mandate largely by integrating this mission more deeply into all the different departments and programs. In other words, wiring it more deeply into the DNA of the agency. Ex-Im Bank's renewable energy promotion program is a bit more stovepiped. We've identified several ways that we think can help. One, the 10% target that we've mentioned is an Appropriations Committee set target, which has to be returned to every year, and that's a bit, I think, frustrating for all concerned. And if that was in the charter, I think that would be taken a bit more seriously and would have a little bit more rigidity to it. Secondly, we believe that, for example, if some of the increase in capital authority for Ex-Im Bank is linked to specific renewable energy targets, and if there are disincentives to not meeting that through the capital authority extension, such as withholding capital authority when they don't meet that target, that might help as well. Increased assignment of staff, of existing staff, and management to the task could also potentially help. With small business, there's any number of staff and officials within Ex-Im Bank that are specifically tasked to this. Ex-Im Bank currently has a pretty small renewable energy efficiency department, and these and many other somewhat practical and simple measures we think could greatly help.
I think we I kind of agree with some points that Mr. Nolan made regarding the staffing and some of the other steps. But I think we have to take that report into context, put into context too. There was a report issued by the Department of Commerce talking about renewable energy export for 2009, and they only mentioned that there were $2.5 billion in renewable energy exports. Well, Ex-Im Bank's authorization levels for that year were about $24 billion, right? And so 10% of that will mean that every export of renewable energy in the U.S. will have to be supported by Ex-Im to be able to meet the 10% of its authorization. So it's good to put that into context when we look at the report, and that's something that the GAO report actually acknowledges in the report. The second point is that there have been steps taken since that were actually coordinated by the new administration that are part of the different marketing efforts that the bank is taking. Like before, the bank was pushing all its products mainly through lenders. It was a lender-driven situation. Now they're doing some of the steps that we mentioned before, which is taking the product towards the exporter with all these events. And they have created some products for renewable energy, like Solar Express, and some of these other products. And the hope is that at some point it will actually increase the levels of authorization to be able to get as close as possible to that 10%. So there are some things that the bank could do better, like Mr. Nolan mentioned, but also there was some limitation because of the market that we're servicing.
That's helpful. Thank you. I'd like to thank all the witnesses. Mr. Eckert, thank you for your testimony. It's a great story. And Mr. Chairman, thanks again for having this hearing.